The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Don Bosco's Dream of Battle. In his good night talk on April 30th, Don Bosco exhorted the boys to make devoutly the May devotions. After urging them, therefore, to greater diligence in the fulfillment of their duties and the choice of some special act of devotion in honor of Mary, he added that he had a dream to tell them. But since it was already late, he would tell it on the following Sunday, May 4th. The boys were beside themselves with impatience. Their curiosity was further aroused by another 2 days' postponement because Don Bosco was too busy. Finally, on the evening of May 4th, their curiosity was satisfied. After prayers, Don Bosco addressed them, as usual, from the little pulpit. He said, "Here I am to keep my promise." As the time for the retreat drew near, I was wondering how my boys would make it and what I should suggest to make it fruitful. On Sunday night, April 25th, the eve of the retreat, I went to bed with this thought in mind. I fell asleep immediately, and I seemed to be standing all alone in a very vast valley enclosed on both sides by high hills. At the far end of the valley along one side, where the ground rose steeply, there was a pure, bright light. The other side was in semi-darkness. As I stood gazing at the plain, Buzzetti and Gastini came up to me and said, "Don Bosco, you'll have to mount a horse. Hurry, hurry." "Are you joking?" I said. "You know how long it's been since I last rode a horse?" They insisted. But in an attempt to excuse myself, I kept repeating, "I don't want to ride a horse. I did it once and fell off." Gastini and Buzzetti kept pressing me ever more and said, "Get on a horse and quickly. There's no time to lose." "But suppose I do mount a horse? Where are you taking me?" "You'll see. Now hurry and mount." "But where's the horse? I don't see any." "There it is," shouted Gastini, pointing to one side of the valley. I looked and saw a beautiful, spirited steed. It had long, strong legs, a thick mane, and a very glossy coat. "Well, since you want me to mount it, I will. But woe to you if I fall," I said. "Don't worry," they replied. "We'll be here with you for any emergency." "And if I break my neck, you'll have to fix it," I told Buzzetti. He then broke into a laugh. "This is no time to laugh," Gastini muttered. We walked over to the horse. Even with their help, I had great difficulty mounting. But finally, I was in the saddle. How tall that horse seemed to be then. It was as if I were perched on top of a high mound from which I could survey the entire valley from end to end. Then the horse started to move. Strangely, while this was happening, I seemed to be in my own room. I asked myself, where are we? Coming toward me, I saw priests, clerics, and others. All looked frightened and breathless. After a long ride, the horse stopped. Then I saw all the priests of the oratory together, with many of the clerics approaching. They gathered around the horse. I recognized them, Father Rua, Father Caliero, and Father Bologna among them. When they reached me, they stopped and silently stared at my horse. I noticed that all seemed worried. Their disquiet was such as I have never seen before. I beckoned to Father Bologna. "Father Bologna," I said, "you're in charge at the main entrance. Can you tell me what happened? Why do you all look so upset?" "I don't know where I am or what I'm doing," he said. "I'm all confused. Some people came in, talked, and left. There's such a hubbub of people coming and going at the main entrance that I don't know what's going on." Is it possible, I wondered, that something very unusual might happen today? Just then, someone handed me a trumpet, saying I should hold on to it, because I would need it. "Where are we now?" I asked. "Blow the trumpet," they said. I did, and heard these words, "We are in the land of trial." Then I saw a multitude of boys, I think over 100,000, coming over the hills. There was absolute silence. They were carrying pitchforks and hastening toward the valley. I recognized among them all the oratory boys and those of our other schools, but there were many more unknown to me. Just then, on one side of the valley, the sky darkened, and hordes of animals resembling lions and tigers appeared. These ferocious beasts had big bodies, strong legs, and long necks, but their heads were quite small. They were terrifying. With bloodshot eyes bulging from their sockets, they hurled themselves at the boys, who immediately stood ready to defend themselves. As the animals attacked, the boys stood firm and beat them off with their pronged pitchforks, which they lowered or raised as needed. Unable to overpower them by this first attack, the beasts snapped at the fork prongs only to break their teeth and vanish. Some of the boys, however, had forks with only one prong, and these boys were heavily wounded. Others had pitchforks with broken or worm-eaten handles, and still others threw themselves at the beasts barehanded and fell victims. Quite a few of these were killed. Many had pitchforks with two prongs and new handles. While this was going on, from the very start, swarms of serpents slithered about my horse. Kicking and stamping, the horse crushed and drove them off. At the same time, it kept growing ever taller and taller. I asked someone what the two-pronged forks symbolized. I was handed a fork, and on the prongs I read these two words: confession on one, communion on the other. But what do the prongs mean? Blow the trumpet, someone said. I did and heard these words: good confession and good communion. I blew the trumpet again and heard these words: broken handle, sacrilegious confessions and communions, worm-eaten handle, faulty confessions. Now that the first attack was over, I rode over the battlefield and saw many dead and wounded. I saw that some of the dead had been strangled, and their necks were swollen and deformed. Still others had starved to death, while enticing food was within their reach. The boys who were strangled are those who unfortunately committed some sins in their early years and never confessed them. Those with disfigured faces are gluttons, and the boys who died of hunger, those who go to confession but never follow the advice or admonitions of their confessor. Next to each boy whose pitchfork had a worm-eaten handle, a word stood out. For some it was pride, for others sloth, for others still immodesty, etc. I must also add that in their march, the boys had to walk over a bed of roses. They liked it, but after a few steps they would utter a cry and fall to the ground, either dead or wounded, because of the thorns hidden underneath. Others instead bravely trampled on those roses and, encouraging one another, marched on to victory. Then the sky darkened again. Instantly, even greater hordes of the same animals or monsters appeared. All this happened in less than 3 or 4 seconds. My horse was surrounded. The monsters increased beyond count, and I, too, began to be frightened. I could feel them clawing at me. Then someone handed me a pitchfork, and I also began to fight them, and the monsters were forced to retreat. Beaten in their first attack, they all vanished. Then I blew the trumpet again, and these words echoed through the valley: victory, victory. Victory, I wondered. How is it possible with so many dead and wounded? And if you'd like to hear the answer to that question, just come back Friday for part 2 of this dream. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.